Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump revealing another cabinet member at an event last night that he hosted. We had a chance to really see him reflect on the victory for the first time as Washington reacts to the official nomination of RFK Jr. as HHS Secretary.
Bill Melugin is live in West Palm Beach, Florida. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Lawrence, good morning to you. I tell you what, these picks are coming in so fast, it's almost hard to keep up with them. Trump made 7 of these announcements yesterday alone for his administration, and the latest one came last night right here in Florida when he made somewhat of an informal announcement about North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Take a listen.
I won't tell you the name of his, the exact name. I think he's an incredible person. Might be something like Burgum. He's from North Dakota. He's going to be announced tomorrow for a very big position. He's going to head the Department of Interior, and he's going to be fantastic.
Now, Burgum was not Trump's splashiest announcement of the day. That came earlier in the evening when he announced that he's going to nominate RFK Jr. to be his Health and Human Services Secretary. That's something he talked about last night at an event at Mar-a-Lago here in Palm Beach. Take a listen.
The news reports people like you, Bobby. Don't get too popular, Bobby. We want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable things.
Now, Trump made a handful of other nominations yesterday as well. Some of those include former Congressman Doug Collins, who's been tapped to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs. He will head the VA. He also announced he's nominating Todd Blanche to be his Deputy Attorney General. We remember Blanche defended Trump during his New York hush money trial. And incoming GOP Senate Majority Leader John Thune says he's going to look at every option to get Trump's nominations confirmed as fast as possible. That includes potentially doing recess appointments if necessary. Take a listen.
I think we have to have all the options on the table, and these nominees deserve their day in court. We are not going to allow the Democrats to thwart the will of the American people in giving President Trump the people that he wants in those positions to implement his agenda.
And guys, one thing about RFK Jr. at HHS, HHS is not just a health agency that's going to handle vaccines and stuff like that. It is also related to the border. HHS is the agency responsible for caring for unaccompanied migrant children who show up at the border. Border Patrol transfers them to HHS. They have to care for them. Then they have to find and vet adult sponsors for them across the country. So if something goes wrong there with migrant children during the Trump administration, that could be politically perilous. And we all know the media is going to be very hawkish trying to find anything they can do when it comes to those migrant children with the Trump administration. We'll send it back to you.
Hey, Bill, did you ever get good answers from the current administration about the missing children? I mean, do they try to rationalize that down? They say that numbers inflated. Have you ever gotten a good answer for that?
The administration's position has been they haven't lost these children. They say they just haven't done the right paperwork on them. So there's different reporting that has come out, but there was a pretty damning Inspector General report from the DHS Inspector General that said they failed to file paperwork with tens of thousands of these children. And we all remember that New York Times report where they were finding these children working in slaughterhouses and construction sites all across the country in violation of labor laws, and some of these kids were killed or seriously maimed working in these jobs. So it's been a big issue. Yeah,
they should be in school, and they maybe shouldn't be here at all. Bill Melugin, thanks so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Currently, Washington answered, though, when you lose children, to say, oh, no, it was just the paperwork.
2024, we cannot find 110,672. It's been over 100,000 every year. And I'm sure there's some missing during the Trump years, but they got to make this a priority.
Well, remember the whistleblower down? I think it was in Texas, and she was working at one of the Catholic charities or something where they take in the children, and individuals around the country could call these shelters and say, I need 2 boys or I need whatever. And she was the whistleblower that said this guy had a ranch or a farm and he needed these 2 boys. And
then
they
went and pick them up.
And then they went to find out where the boys were, and they had been on helping and lived in a shed, didn't work food. Exactly.
So you talk about a disruptor. Here we go. RFK Jr. gave CNN something to talk about. I'm not sure anyone's watching, but he was named HHS Secretary. They've been talking about different positions, maybe a czar position, but he has spent a lot of his time to environmental causes, maybe the last 10 years, focusing on what's in our food, what's in our vaccines, what is in our medicine. He talks a lot about it. Kayleigh Callie Means wrote a book about it. Dr. McCary followed up with it. They're all on the same page on the Frankenstein foods we're all digesting and how it relates. But now RFK Jr. will have a chance to put together his programs and start dismantling some of the corruption he says that exists in that behemoth organization.
Look at his resume. Very impressive. He founded the Waterkeeper Alliance, which is the world's largest clean water advocacy group. He founded Children's Health Defense to address childhood chronic disease. Don't they say, he says 6 in 10 people have chronic disease here in America now. Named Time Magazine's hero for the planet. That was when he was probably a Democrat or didn't support Trump when they liked him. He attended Harvard, London School of Economics, the University of Virginia Law School, Pace University School of Law as well. And then in 2008, Obama considered him as the head of the EPA. And there was a glowing article about it in Politico. Obama considers stars for cabinet, strongly considering RFK Jr. to head the EPA.
So this guy really has an agenda and has been endorsed by the president-elect. He says that he wants to combat the chronic disease epidemic, eliminate toxins from foods, water, and air, support sustainable farming and reducing chemical usage, preserve and restore natural ecosystems, and ensure regulatory agencies act.
Who's not for
interest.
that?
The big thing, Ainsley, I think, is the food.
I agree.
It's like, I don't know why this has become, I don't know, maybe because it's RFK now, it's become a partisan issue, but getting our kids quality food, and us as well, and why do other countries have quality food and we don't, I think is a major issue.
They talk about how, okay, he has ideas, but can he run an agency? He has, he's smart, but has he ever done anything like this before? Does he really know what he's getting into? He's overseeing 13 agencies. He's going to be overseeing the FDA, CDC, Medicare, Medicaid, and Affordable Care Act, which is on a respirator, responsible for caring for unaccompanied migrant boarders. He's got a huge budget. But here's the thing. I cannot wait for his nomination hearing, because they're going to press him to back up his beliefs. Yeah. And he's going to welcome this conversation. He likes having these debates. He spent his entire career. We used to do it like this. We used to debate things rather than dig in and try to vilify the other side. I also thought it was interesting that Jared Polis, I thought this was being trolled.
Endorsed
the
them.
governor of Colorado said this about his nomination. If as a country we follow the science, we would also be far more concerned about the impact of pesticides on public health and AG policy, as well as nutrition, lack of access. And he goes on to say that he's very encouraged about RFK getting this nomination. So obviously he's not going to have a vote. It's going to be in the Senate. But the governor of Colorado shows an openness. Why wouldn't you show an openness? And I just think if there wasn't a pandemic where all of us were forced to take a vaccine or be fired, or in some cases, or you got it and you have these ramifications, and you see that Anthony Fauci could not defend a lot of his actions, and people started looking to the agencies, RFK doesn't become the rock star he became, and he doesn't have an opportunity to do this. I don't think the American people would have been open to it without the pandemic.
Yeah, when he was on the Curvy Couch with us, we were asking him about what's in our foods that's so bad. And he said, let's take McDonald's, for instance. He said in other countries, they use 3 ingredients and to make your McDonald's French fries. Here, we use the wrong ingredients. We used to use a certain type of oil when we cooked.
Seed oil.
But didn't he say we're going to go back to something else? I think he said he's not for the seed oil, right? I can't remember, but he said whatever we're doing now is so bad for our children, and he wants to go back to that. He said, I also talked about Fruit Loops. He said all the dyes to make all of the Fruit Loops different colors, it's so bad for you, and other countries don't even allow it. So
he says that they use fruit dyes in other countries, so it's more natural. And we use different dyes with all different types of ingredients as well. So he talked to Rachel a little while ago, and this is what he had to say.
In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to processed foods, which are all poison.
So, it just showed how we got in politics. He was talking about the food stamps. And then people are outraged. They say, we shouldn't be using food stamps for Coke and Pepsi because it's terrible for you and it's not good for you. And they said, how dare you? We should make our own choices when it comes to food stamps. Just because we're on tough economic times, it means I can't have soda. What he's just trying to say is, if we're giving you food stamps to buy stuff that's bad for you, we're not helping you. And how many people do we see in economically depressed areas who are clearly overweight? And you wonder, it's not because of excess. Maybe it's because the food they're eating is cheaper, but it's also terrible for you. So this is going to ripple right down to the farms. And then what we're paying them to do and what we're subsidizing not to do. So this is going to be so disruptive. And the question is, can he push back against Big Pharma? Can he push back against the food industry, the FDA, and get his point across? Will he have enough allies in the bureaucracy to get this done, or is he going to be frustrated in 8 months and say, I got to back out?
Yeah, because a lot of these farmers want these chemicals because it preserves their food. It makes it last longer. So it sits on the shelf. They're able to sell it for longer. And he's saying it's very harmful, all these chemicals for our bodies. You do wonder why we're seeing so many people in their 20s with stage 4 cancer, or why the obesity problem is such a big problem in our country. Is it because we're eating too much, or is it because what's in our food is making us bigger?
It's become a huge epidemic.
I mean, we go to Italy and you can eat pizza and pasta and you don't gain any weight.
It's so true.
3/4 of the country is obese or overweight right now. So,
and by the way, it's tallow fat. Tallow fat is what they used to cook the French fries. Thank you, our wonderful producers in the back.
So the president-elect made another appointment. He was supposed to announce it today. He said it's going to be more formal, but he also named someone that was on the short list to be Vice President, Doug Burgum, to be head of the Interior Department.
Listen, I know he's lower profile than the others, but he will make a huge impact. You do not know how smart he is. This is like a NFL player helping youth sports and saying, I'm going to teach you how to play football. Because this guy knows everything about finance, tech, the open tundra. He grew up on a ranch. He will be fantastic at working in conjunction with oil and gas responsibly, and he's got international connections. You're going to see this guy make a huge impact. But I loved last night. Yeah. Because I watched the whole repeat. It's the first time, I think, the president reflected publicly on his victory. I've never seen him so content, so happy in front of an adoring crowd and a certain celebrity.
It was the America First Policy Institute Gala. It was at Mar-a-Lago, and Sylvester Stallone spoke about the president and compared him to his Rocky character. Listen to this.
We are in the presence of a really mythical character. I love mythology. And this individual does not exist on this planet. Nobody in the world could have pulled off what he pulled off, so I'm in awe. And I'll just say this, and I mean it. When George Washington defended his country, he had no idea that he was going to change the world. Because without him, you can imagine what the world would look like. Guess what? We got the second George Washington. Congratulations! Please welcome the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
The men who died, who gave that right to me, and
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, thank you, Sly. You know, Sly does not do that. He doesn't do that stuff. And he did a beautiful job. And we're going to turn our country around. We're going to make it so great, so strong, so powerful. We're going to bring it all back. I want to thank some people that have been so instrumental in doing such a great job. We have a man who has a seriously high IQ. You know, I'm a person that believes in high IQs, and his is about as high as they get. He launched a rocket 3 weeks ago, and then he went to Pennsylvania to campaign because he considered this more important than launching rockets that cost billions of dollars. Elon Musk, another one who's another great mind and a great guy and so popular, and I think he's right. He wants to make people healthy. It's driven him pretty wild over the last number of years. Today, I nominated him for, I guess, if you like health and if you like people that live a long time, it's the most important position, RFK Jr., Bobby. And a woman who was a Democrat and was an independent. She went independent, and last week she said, I want to be a Republican because this is what I stand for. And I've always admired her, and I've admired her because she was loaded up with common sense. And it's all about common sense. I mean, we're conservative in this room, but we can understand the other side. But what we really are is people with common sense. And I think that's why we won with the numbers that we won by. Tulsi Gabbard.
He's having a lot of fun.
Loaded up with comments.
I will say the president looks rested as well.
Yeah.
He looks like he is in the zone right now, picking his cabinet members. It's good seeing him like this right now.
Yeah, I saw Congressman Torres in New York say, Donald Trump has begun to crack the ultimate blue wall. He lost New Jersey by 7. He lost New York by 10. And if we don't wake up, it's going to be it's just only the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing. Remember, the thing that struck me about Hulk Hogan, he came out and said, I've always been a supporter, but I never spoke up. Now he spoke up. And then you see Stallone. I always knew he was a supporter, but now he speaks up. And then I see MSG. I'm watching New York City, people walking around, you mentioned, with their red hats.
Yeah.
So we always knew the president had fervent supporters, but not in all across the country. In fact, they were so-called a trigger. There's something becoming very mainstream, or either his enemies are giving him an honest look for the first time that is happening before our eyes.
Ainsley, there used to be the silent Trump voter. They are out now. They're out, and I don't mean out there just yapping away, but just putting on their hat, putting on their T-shirt.
Yeah.
That didn't happen before.
I actually saw someone in New York City. That's so rare to see someone in New York City with a MAGA hat on. I think they're definitely doing that. They're definitely doing that in South Carolina. At the there was a concert at Clemson, and everyone, it was Lee Brice was playing at Clemson, and a friend went and said everyone in the crowd was wearing those. All the students were wearing them. They were all chanting. I think it was right after he had won. And so you are seeing that a lot. But here, you don't necessarily, I think the factors are different in New York. The reason that I think he lost only by 10 points in New York is because there was that silent Jewish vote.
Yeah.
Here, I have a group that I talk to that are Jewish, have never voted for a Republican, and they decided to this election, and they love Donald Trump because of what he does for Israel. I think also here, the crime issue, the illegal immigration issue was a big deal here. So I don't know if they're voting necessarily for the Republican Party, and if that will continue. Maybe it will if the Democratic Party doesn't get their act together and they continue to go more and more progressive. But I think they voted for Trump because, A, they know 4 years ago he was in office. They saw what he did, and they know that what the liberal media was trying to say was a lie. He wasn't going to ban. People knew he wasn't going to ban abortion. They try to say that. He says it's going back to the states. They knew a lot of other things that he was going to do, and it was going to be positive for them. And the economy.
Yep.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.